all the people peering in
outside the glass, they just kept right on working.
So as the Montessori method grew, Montessori went and developed trainings in other areas. But then World War II occurred, and Italy was under fascist rule. And Montessori schools were closed down. And Montessori was invited to go to India. While she was in India, that's when she developed the elementary curriculum. She and her son Mario were there together, and they had time and space to do that, as basically being Italian. They were resident, and India was under the rule of the Raj, the English. Well, they were enemies, so they were put under house arrest. So they were able to do quite a bit of working and thinking, because they couldn't go anywhere. After the war, Montessori returned first to Rome and then eventually to the Netherlands, where she lived until her death. And her Montessori schools have spread all over the world. I have been to see Montessori schools in Italy, in the Netherlands, in India. I've worked in centers in the Czech Republic. I know there's schools in, I mean, they're literally all over the world. And what is so wonderful is when you go from Montessori school to Montessori school to Montessori school, you see a consistency of method, a consistency of nature of the adults. It's truly it's a way of being, it's a way of life. And people that are true Montessorians manifest this not only in their classrooms, but also in their homes and in their lives and in their interactions with people. Because Montessori had a very strong desire. It was a desire for peace. A desire for peace within people and amongst people. And she felt that that was part of the mission of education, was to assist the human evolution, which was the transformation of human beings. We weren't going to evolve too much more as far as our physical nature was concerned, but we were going to be evolving, and we're evolving in an emotional and spiritual nature. And that was what Montessori saw as the role of education. She also looked at human beings not as people who progressed linearly, but who went through phases and stages of development. In fact, Montessori was one of the very first educators and first thinkers who actually looked at things this way. I mean, basically the perspective of most educators at the time that she became involved in education was that, you know, sort of sit the child down, open head, insert information, and then have them parrot it back. Montessori felt that she saw real different ways of learning in children of different ages. And she called these stages of development the planes of development. And from her perspective, she saw 4 different planes of development. The first plane was from birth to 6, the second from 6 to 12, the third from 12 to 18, and the fourth from 18 to 24. So she really did not feel that human beings were completely formed until about 24, which makes a lot of sense to me. Because I don't know about your perspective on things, but I think that we still are doing a lot of learning and growing about who we are and about how we relate and how we interact with the world during our late teens and early 20s. And she was one of the few people who had that perspective at all. I mean, really, it was just, well, you can learn this, and you need a little bit more information when you get a little older, and a little bit more, and then you get to this place and you stop. And the only issue that I have with Montessori in her developmental planes is that I don't think we stop at 24. I think that phases and stages of development continue all the way through our lives. And we always have the opportunity and the potential to transform. However, we can't go back to where we once were. And so Montessori felt it was really, really important during each phase or each plane of development to understand the nature of the human being in that phase of development, and then provide the optimal environment so that they can successfully accomplish what they need during this specific period of time. Because in order to move successfully onto the next plane of development, certain transformations need to occur. And she really looked at going from one stage to another as a transformation of being, not just a linear progression. Because her goal for all of humanity was that each human being could be a complete, fully formed, fully functioning adult who was adapted to their time and space and group, and who knew themselves and were connected with their purpose in a larger sense, that we all are, by being unique, had some unique, wonderful thing to offer. That as human beings, there's a component of us that requires that we give something back to the world. And that if these children were supported through these developmental stages, they could come to this place of being fully fulfilled themselves, and then also being able to offer their gift to the world. And not only be adapted to what was there, but have the capacity to be flexible, the capacity to change according to new situations which they had not experienced before. This is a pretty large goal. And it was a pretty futuristic goal. And if you read developmental psychology and educational psychology, you think about people like Piaget, Erik Erikson. They were Montessori students. They, however, were men. And if you can imagine, I mean, this was the very first woman to become a doctor in Italy. Women didn't have the vote either at this time. So it was her students who received recognition for a lot of this thinking. Much of what Montessori wrote was published in India and, wasn't spread in the general population. And it's only recently that we're seeing Montessori being recognized by others outside of our unique little corner of the universe. Anyway, we want to talk a little bit more about each stage of development, and then we're going to focus basically on the 6 to 12-year-old, because that's the group that you guys are most interested in. In the first phase of development, Montessori called this the period of the absorbent mind. She said that children at this age take in information like little sponges. And the way that they learn best is by doing. They need to interact with the environment. Their brains are still growing, and it's the interaction of the hand, the eye, that trains the body, but also trains the mind. And so in the Montessori environment for the birth to 3, the Montessori environment for birth to 3 is just really exquisite. Everything is absolutely the right size for this child. When you look in a typical daycare center for kids that are not walking yet, and kids under the age of 2, 2.5, you'll find things like cribs, high chairs, playpins, things for containing them.